Okay, in this video I'm going to go over, it's sort of an updated version of how to import developer kits into MayaStar. I've learned a few things over the months, and so I thought I'd pass it along, and I've done a lot of experimenting with getting stuff from Blender into MayaStar. Okay, so in this video I'm going to be using Shadeen Monroe's, or Slink's. Shadeen Monroe is the owner of Slink, and she gave me permission to use her developer kit Blender files to do my demonstration, to do this tutorial with. So thank you, Shadeen. That was very sweet of you. Although if you have MayaStar, you can, if you are accepted as a Slink developer or whatever, you know, so where you can get her developer kits. Just because you have MayaStar doesn't mean you'll get her developer kits automatically. She has certain criteria for who she gives her developer kits out to. So if you meet her criteria and you have MayaStar, you can get a version of her developer kit that already has her bodies in MayaStar. You know, it's just a file that you can open up, and if you have MayaStar, all the sliders and everything will work. But if you don't have MayaStar, if you take that, you can open it up in Maya, but you won't have access to the sliders. So you have to have MayaStar. Anyway, okay. So the first thing you need to do is go over here to Blender, and I'm going to open up her file. So we're starting exactly from scratch. Holding down the left mouse button, dragging it down to get rid of that. Hold down the left mouse button, drag it over that way, and get rid of that. Okay. So first thing I want to do is we're going to do the hourglass shape, which is this one. First thing you need to do is you need to be able to see the appearance sliders. So you come up here, load appearance sliders. Okay, so next what you need to do is you need to click on here, and this resets all the sliders back to their neutral shape settings. The neutral shape is the same as in MayaStar, it's the same as mesh default. It's the same as the mesh default shape in MayaStar. And what that means is mesh default. Okay, it's giving me an error because I don't have MayaStar activated in C. Okay, but it's the same as the mesh default button here. What that does is it puts the skeleton into where all the bone positions are in the same positions as they are defined in the avatar skeleton XML file in all viewers. And that's actually the default bone positions for Second Life. So I call it mesh default, and in here in Avstar they call it the neutral shape, which is very accurate. It says when all your sliders are set, so where the bones should be in the neutral position. And then I have SL default avatar shape, and that's this one, SL default shape. So anyway, but we need it to be in the neutral shape. So you click on that, and it sets all the slider settings so that they're in, the bones are in the default neutral shape, or the same as the avatar skeleton XML file, how it's defined there. Okay, so after you do that, you have to bake the mesh. So you come down here to bake mesh. Now what bake mesh does is it basically bakes this shape. This mesh shape may not be this mesh shape if you were to detach it from the skeleton, because the skeleton has different scale settings and different bone positions, and so if you were to detach this mesh without baking it to it, it could very well deform. So you want to bake it so that this mesh matches up with the neutral bone settings, or in MayaStar, the mesh default bone settings. Okay, so that's why we baked it. Okay, now all you have to do is you just have to go File, export, and export using the MayaStar DAE. I was under the impression that the MayaStar DAE misshaped would do calculations and reshape the mesh slightly so that it would be what you see in Blender would be what you see in Second Life. That is wrong. That was a misimpression of mine. That is not true. It does export it with whatever shape it's been baked to. And so that's why we want to export it out as an MayaStar Claude DAE. So anyway, so I had that was a misimpression of mine. Okay, so then you want to come down here to advanced. You want to turn off everything except for a couple of settings. Or really only one setting, but I like two. You want to make sure export SL rotations is on, and the sanity check you can leave on. You could turn that off, I believe, but I just leave these two on. Okay, so now we're going to, let's just name this test 1. Export. Okay, we export it. You can ignore these warnings. And now we can come back here to Maya. And we're going to activate the female bento. Because you have to make sure you have all the bones that the original rig was rigged to. Now, she happened to rig it to the bento skeleton, as you can tell with the face bones. So that's why I'm going to use the bento skeleton. Theoretically, you could, I'm not sure, but you could rig it to, because I happen to know her mesh body here is only rigged to the original skeleton bones, the body itself. This particular mesh body. Theoretically, you could activate the, theoretically, I haven't tried it, so don't quote me on it, to the original MayaStar skeleton, theoretically. But I haven't tried it, so I'll try it in another. So anyway, so okay. So first thing we want to do is make sure it's in the mesh default, and just for a good measure, say for this is SL, this is the default shape in Second Life. That's the bones set to all the default settings that they are in the avatar skeleton XML file in your viewer. So okay, so we want to create a vine pose. Just to be on the safe side, we want to make sure that this is the vine pose. So you can come in here to MayaStar, Skin Weight Tools, Custom Vine Pose, Create Vine Pose. I had it already. I could have just clicked, opened, torn off already. I could just click that there. But okay, so we just want to make sure that's set it for that. Okay. So now what you want to do is, okay. Now I have this already open for earlier versions of Maya. You get it from here for earlier versions of Maya. Okay. I am going to, because it doesn't really show on here, because this affects the fitted mesh bones. Okay, so there's the fitted mesh avatar female. You want to set this for skeleton for earlier versions of set skeleton for 2009 earlier versions. Even if you're using, I'm using Maya 2014. Okay, what this does is it zeroes out some of the rotations on, or the rotations on the collision volume bones. So you want to make sure you do that, and you want to create vine pose again. Just want to make sure it's on create vine pose with that set like that. Okay, and now what you want to do is we can hide that, show that. See, it doesn't affect this this mesh because this mesh isn't rigged to the collision volumes. Now we can import. Here's the test one. Just import the DAE, and boom, it comes in. Now it looks a little funny, but that's no problem. All we have to do is collision bones to rotate, collision bones rotations in SL. Boom. Okay. And the way you can tell if it did it right or not is if it's set to newer, if it's set to these rotations, if we didn't set the reset rotations, if we didn't do this little procedure of set MayaStar or set skeleton to 2009 or earlier, this is what the skeleton, what the mesh would have looked like when we imported it. So that's why we do that. And so now we'll set it to SL rotations, and we'll go create bind pose again, just to make sure that we're on that bind pose. So we set it back to SL rotations, and we click create bind pose again, that custom bind pose. So now when you rig your mesh clothing to it, you have the skeleton in the proper setting to rig your stuff to. Okay, now to prove this, we can select the mesh, and we can now export out selections. You can see what bones I have. This is the script editor. You come here with the mesh selected that you can export out. Skin cluster bone names, and this tells us all the bones that the mesh is rigged to. Okay, or that are in the skin cluster. Pretty sure the M head does not have any weights on it, but Shadeen, it's in the skin. It's in the skin cluster from Shadeen. So let's export out. A good reason to do that is obviously this doesn't have more than 110 bones. You can't have more than 110 bones in the skin cluster. Otherwise, you won't get the option to export out with skin weights, or to import with skin weights. So that's a good check to run. And so now we're going to export out. Export selection. Link our class test for video. Okay. And we're exporting it out. Okay. A nice little musical interlude. Okay, so now I'm coming in here to Second Life, and I'm wearing the demo of the hourglass. I'm wearing the demo of the hourglass. That way, when I add what I'm going to upload, we can tell how closely does it match the mesh body in Second Life. So now I'm going to upload mesh, and there's this link, hourglass test video. Okay, this is always a good sign. When this is not grayed out, that means it has weight. Okay, and I'm just going to put this to 0, 0, 0, just to make it cheap, cheaper to upload. Okay, link hourglass test video body. Okay, include skin weights. Calculate. Upload. Okay, so here it is. I just have to right mouse click on it, click add, and there you are. If you see this flickering, that's good. That means it's fitting perfectly. All except the shoulders, which is very common. If you zoom in, you can see it's really close. So if that is good enough for your clothing, you know, if that is close enough for your clothing, you're done. You can then just come in here, add this, you know, create a layer, add selected objects. Link. For some reason, everywhere else in Maya, if you put a space when you're typing in a name, it will automatically put an underscore when you hit save or when you hit enter. For some reason, the layer editor doesn't. Let's link our glass body. Okay, so now we have the hourglass body in there. Now, if you did not like the shoulders, I will be doing another video of how to deal with that. I haven't heard back from Shadeen yet. I haven't heard back from her. I have a sneaking suspicion that this mesh was originally smooth bind or bound to the skeleton with the arms at a different angle other than the T-pose, or that the mesh was originally created in another pose. And so I'm going to do another video showing how to deal with that. You know, it involves finding the bones, so we know it's the M shoulder bones. You have to rotate them into position, and you got to be in the right mode. I believe. I think it's pose mode. You have to be in the right pose mode. You have to have the Euler set. 45. Euler. Maybe 45. And but I haven't. So anyway, so you have to get the arms in the same position as they were before, which might be, it could be 45 degrees, it could be more than 45 degrees, it could be less than 45 degrees. And then what you got to do is you have to, anyway, so I'm going to make a whole other video showing how to do it when the mesh is originally rigged in a different position other than the T-pose. Because as far as I can tell, that's why you get these different. See, it looks fine in the T-pose here. You know, it's pretty accurate. Looks just fine. But it does something weird. I'm pretty sure this is, I've seen this happen in Maya, where you rig something in a different pose than the T-pose, and then you do things to it and you duplicate it when it's in the T-pose, and then you try to copy the weights, and even though they're the same weights, the mesh is different. It reacts differently. So I'm pretty sure that's what the problem is here, is that the mesh was originally rigged in a different pose other than the T-pose for the arms. But if this is good enough, if this is close enough for your mesh clothing, it is very close. If that's good enough, you're done. You won't have to go through these other steps. But if you're a stickler for accuracy, you can watch my another video that I'm going to do of how to deal with when mesh is rigged in other positions. So anyway, so that's it for this video. I hope that helps out a lot. It should make bringing stuff into MayaStar a lot easier, especially, I would say that almost the 90% or more of the mesh bodies out there were originally created. If they give you a blend file and they didn't create it in Maya to begin with, most of the mesh bodies out there were created with Blender, and they were created with Blender and MayaStar. MayaStar is just the go-to. I couldn't imagine trying to create a mesh body for Second Life without MayaStar. I would think it'd be almost near impossible to get it good weighting and good results. So, So, and I love Matrice and Gaia. They're great. I'm pretty good friends with Matrice. Although you haven't talked to me in a couple months, Matrice. Hint, hint. He's been so busy trying to get MayaStar updated. I'm sure that he just hasn't had time to chit chat. So, so anyways, that's the end of this video. And then, of course, you're going to want to save your scene. Go save scene and save it whatever you want to save it as. If you're curious as to where am I, what is this location that Kathy is in, I am, let me see, make sure I have, oh good, I do, okay. I am in a nice TOS Romulan warbird that I created a few weekends ago, full size. I made it to go with my full size Enterprise. The reason there's the back half and then the cells are missing, it's supposed to be coming out of a wormhole, because this is a single sim. This is a single sim, and the ship doesn't fit completely in a single sim. It's facing into the corner, so basically everything just underneath the word Enterprise is outside the sim. So this is the corner. So basically 3/4 of this saucer section is actually in empty space. But this is an island and there's no adjacent sims. Oops, there we go. It's the shuttle bay. I did not make the shuttle. This is a mesh shuttle that I did not make, but I did not make the shuttle bay. Laura Claiborne. It's either Claiborne or Chadbourne. I can never remember. Good friend of mine. Author of Scotty's Guide to the Enterprise. Came out years ago. Famous, one of those Star Trek manuals. She created this. This is all prints. The ship itself is all sculpties made years and years ago. The ship is actually 2 sims long by just about a sim wide. We're at Calabrese. This is the sim that we had all our bento NDA, non-disclosure agreement, when it was still a secret. This is where we had our bento meetings. The Lindens and a group of invited residents. We were invited because we had, each resident had special knowledge of, they handpicked residents that they knew had knowledge about the Avatar and the skeleton. And so that's why they picked me, and they picked MayaStar, they picked Matrice, or Gaia, and then Gaia said, well, I don't have time, but my, Matrice, who is I don't know what to call him, I don't know if he's a partner or if he's an employee or however of MayaStar, she said he's their main coder. He does most of the code development for MayaStar. So he came in and was on it, and a bunch of other people were in there. And this is my TOS Miranda class interpretation ship that I crashed into the island at our last meeting. USS Defiant. Anyway, unfortunately, this sim is not open. Only people who have access to the sim are people who were either Lindens or who were either Lindens or were members of the bento group, the NDA group. Those are the only people who had access. That's actually a single print. I think that's a mesh. Yeah, that's a sculpty. I did it. Yeah, this is a sculpty. It's just a single sculpty. Kind of a cool effect. Used Puppeteer to create that animation. Anyway, this one's just blank. inside the ship. And it's the bridge, full-size bridge, just crashed into the planet. There's the Enterprise. I'll set the scene. Okay. And there's the Romulan warbird. And I do have, a couple of decks. This is an unfinished Desilu deck. This is all made with Sculpties, well before mesh was around. Sick bay. I won't go through the whole thing. This is I call it the Desilu deck because it's based on the blueprints, the footprint of the Desilu Studios, where they originally created the sets for the Desilu Studios, where they originally created the show. Police office. One of the few things I didn't make myself. I didn't make the skull. All these are Sculpties. Even this wall thing is a Sculptie, simply because it saved a couple of prims. Try to keep the prim count down. We've got the flying pizza. In there. Okay, there we go. This is engineering. Anyway, then I do have a, oops, there's a toilet. This is the crew quarters. There's like 80 beds, and it's only a third of the saucer section. Average crew quarters. Behind the blue doors are the bathrooms. Although they have the upgraded sonic shower. There's supposed to be a stall, like, in a public toilet, but I didn't feel like wasting all the prim, so I pretend it's one toilet and one bidet. Now these hallways are finished. So that's all. It's even better at night. Let's see. World. There we go. Actually, let's see. Sit there. I'm gonna sit there. Oh, don't know why it was named Sleep. Okay, I'm gonna stand. Where are the lights? The lights should be coming on. Why aren't the lights coming on? Oh, local lights. There we go. There we go. Local lights. Now this is not a scripted thing, this is just local lights. You can only have so many lights turned on around you, so as you see them flickering on, that's not a script. There's basically a light in every one of these beams, and I tinted the lights depending on the color, because this is like a lens, so it would give off a different glow. This is one of the few things I didn't make. This was also made by Laura Claiborne. 100% prims. But everything else you see practically is sculpted. The only things that are not prims are basically the walls and the ceiling and the floor. That's not a sculpty. But that's a sculpty. The doors are actually sculpties. This archway. This archway and the walls that connect it on the sides are a single sculpty. I was a sculpty master. It's a single sculpty. That's a single sculpty. Pretty sure that is the yep, it's a single sculpty. And these actually do work. Okay, Whispers of Calm. It turns it on and gives you the instructions. They actually work. Not voice, it's you type in local channel. So you can call any other. That's a sculpty. That's a sculpty. This whole thing, this is a sculpty. These 3 cylinders, they could have been made out of cylinders, 3 prims, but they're actually sculpties, or a single sculpty. The tubes, all 3 tubes are a single sculpty. I did that because you save 2 prims per sculpty. So, and there's a lot of them. And I figured out how not to get them to blur. These little lines, that took me a long time to figure out. It has to do with the ratio of the texture. See, it's a 128 by 1024. Keeps them from going blurry. Giving away all my good secrets. That's I think it's a couple of sculpties. Yeah, it's 6. 6 prims total. But they're all, you know, these sculpties. Pretty sure the back plate might be just a flat cube. Yeah. All sculpties. Oh, there's nothing there. It's because there's only one elevator for the whole ship. If you have more than that, they tend to interfere with each other. So you just walk through. See, there's a sensor in the floor. Calls the lift. Like that. That's supposed to open. I don't know why it didn't open. Sit in here. Let's go to the shuttle bay. And this whole thing is practically sculpties. Shuttle bay. This is Laura Claiborne shuttle bay. They kind of look futuristic with these wings. course, no hands and feet. It's kind of odd. Oh, I do have feet. I have my shoes on. But no hands, that's kind of weird. Let's see. Whoops. There we go. Down here in the shuttle bay. I like this. Let's see. I did not make that particular. Oh, wait, did I? I don't think I did. I might have. She might have. Yep, I made it. No. Because Laura made it. And then Laura did the wall hanging. She did everything. Everything in here is practically, except for the shell bays and shuttles, are regular prints. You know, she does incredible print work. Just absolutely fantastic. That's how they get down here. Of course, that's just floating there. Come again. Give me a minute. I just love the shuttle bay. I wish it was mesh, because then it would cost a lot less land impact. Down that way. I won't shoot everything. I might be able to get one of these from Laura. It's like a lounge. Isn't that gorgeous? Oh, I love the original Enterprise. It's my favorite. So this is like a little lounge. That's most of it. That's most of the ship. I didn't show you everything. I just wish you could get, anyway. You can get a feel for just how huge the ship is. I mean, that's how big. Now, actually, well, it's, okay, it is this big compared to a human being. But the ship is actually 115% bigger than it would be if you measured it in Second Life. The reason being is that your average, I made it 115, or I should say that Laura and I and a couple of others who were working on it decided to, together, kind of, to make it 115% bigger, because the average male avatar in Second Life is 7 feet tall. 7 feet tall. And then on top of that, you add a camera position 3 feet above and behind the avatar. And then that means that this camera is sitting for the average male avatar at 10 feet. So I had originally made the bridge long before I made the hull of the ship, and I had to make it 115 50% larger than according to the blueprints. Because, like I said, the average male avatar in Second Life is, like I said, they're 7 feet tall. So, so that's why the ship is actually bigger. But proportional-wise, because I'm like 6'6", my avatar is like 6'6" in these heels, which is way taller than the average woman. So, so proportional-wise, this is how big the Enterprise is, and this is considered a small ship by sci-fi standards today. The Enterprise D so this is 1 sim wide by 2 sims long. Barely fits within 2 sims. Enterprise D is like 2 sims wide by 3 sims long. It's huge. If you ever, this is considered a very small ship. It's like a scout ship. And even that's still a fairly good size. So, I don't know why I'm doing this and turned a 15-minute video into a 40-minute long video. Let's turn this on. And this only fits. I hate it when it does that. Okay, I can't quite reach it. There we go. Okay, if I turn the daylight back on, okay, you can get a feel for how big the sim is. See this lightly colored area of the water? That's the size of the sim. That's the actual size of the sim. So that's what the width is in X and Y, but in Z goes out to like 5,000 meters. So it's like 250. No, it's what is it? 128 and 128. 128 by 128 is the exact center of the sim. So it's 256 meters wide, but it's 5,000 meters tall. So that's why I was able to fit this ship in. Crashing it straight down. Anyway, I like looking at my work. Let's see, go back to midnight. It's always cooler at midnight because you get to see all the lights of the ship. And hypnotize you. Buy MayaStar. Tell your friends about MayaStar. I'm just checking. But tell your friends about MayaStar. So anyway,